Our gospel text from the lectionary this morning is Gospel of John. So we're in the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Chapter 21, verses 1 through 19. And let me just set this up a little bit for you. This is the last chapter of John. So it's the end of his book. It's sort of the end of the story. If you read the very last few verses of it, it says, that's all that's written here. But don't think that it's the end of the story. That ages worth of material could be added, but I have to end here. There's sort of a interesting setup for saying I'd like to say more, but I got to stop sometime. But so we're here in this very last chapter of the book of John. And then your other context you need to remember in this, we are in this season of after Easter, and this goes on for quite a few weeks yet. And after Easter, Jesus takes the 40 days and makes all these different appearances around Jerusalem area. And appears after the resurrection to different followers. And as the story sets up for us, this is his third time he has come back to visit his disciples. 3 times. And this is the last encounter that's recorded in John, which makes it interesting. It's sort of a long kind of text. It seems like it mixes a lot of content and story to me, but it is this telling of his last encounter with them, and it starts out with fishing. Oh, fisher people! It starts out with fishing, which symbolically is where Jesus started in his calling of the disciples, because they were mostly all, come along with me, people. They were all, yeah. And that's where he called the first of the disciples, was along the Sea of Galilee or Lake of Tiberias, they also call it. So this is where we're starting in this last bit of text. I'm reading from Message translation as well. So it goes, after this, Jesus appeared again to the disciples. Again, remember, third time. Appeared again to the disciples, this time at the Tiberias Sea, or the Sea of Galilee. And this is how he did it. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the brother of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. And Simon Peter announced, I'm going fishing. And the rest of them replied, well, we're going with you. And so they went out and they got in the boat. They caught nothing that night. This is night fishing. They caught nothing that night. And when the sun came up, Jesus was standing on the beach, but they did not recognize him. And then Jesus spoke to them, good morning. Did you not catch anything for breakfast? And they answered, no, because they hadn't caught anything. And he said, well, throw the net off to the right side of the boat and see what happens. And so they did what he said. And then all of a sudden, there were so many fish in it that they were not strong enough to pull it in. So then the disciple that Jesus loved said to Peter, It's the master. When Simon Peter realized that it was the master, he threw on some clothes, for he was stripped for work, and he dove into the sea. Now, the other disciples came in by boat, for they weren't really that far from land, 100 yards or so, and they were pulling along the net full of fish. When they got out of the boat, they saw a fire that was laid on the beach with fish and bread already cooking on it. And Jesus said, "Bring some of the fish that you've just caught." And so Simon Peter joined them. He pulled the net to the shore. It was 153 big fish. That's more than what Eddie had, Paula. 153, love the detail, of big fish. And even all of those fish, with that many of them, the net didn't rip. So Jesus says to them, "Breakfast is ready." And not one of the disciples asked, "Who are you?" Not one of them. They knew at this point that it was the master. So then Jesus took the bread and gave it to them, and he did the same with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus had shown himself alive to the disciples since being raised from the dead. The story continues. Do you love me? After breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Oh, yes, Master, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." And then Jesus asked him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Oh, yes, Master, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then shepherd my sheep." And then Jesus said it a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Now, Peter was upset that he asked for the third time, "Do you love me?" So Peter answered, "Master, you know everything that there is to know. You've got to know that I love you." So Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." I'm telling you the very truth now. When you were young, you dressed yourself and you went to wherever you wished, but when you get old, you will have to stretch out your hands while someone else dresses you and takes you where you don't want to go. He said this to hint at the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And then he commanded him, "Follow me." We enter this third encounter of Jesus appearing post resurrection to the disciples. And we need to remember they have been through extreme trauma. Not unlike many stories that you might have, including Becky's. That was extreme trauma, what she's just been through. They're in a place of sort of an overwhelming kind of response, post drama, if you will. All that they went through. I mean, they went highs and lows, and they had this time of traveling with somebody. They walked away from their whole life as they knew it, as these fishermen, and began following him. And then, with only a few years, all they see all these miracles and these incredible things happen. They had come to this high grand entry into Jerusalem one week, and then the whole week ensues afterwards. There's a meal of the Passover unlike anything they've ever experienced. They go to the Garden of Gethsemane. There's a betrayal there and a kiss, and there's violence, and then Jesus is arrested and he's hauled away, and then there's torture and ridicule and humiliations, and he's crucified in this brutality, and the body's taken away, and their leader, and they're vulnerable and they're at risk, and they see all this. You remember? You remember the stories, right? It's only been a few weeks. The disciples surely, at this point, were rather crushed, exhausted, numb at all they had seen and done. Emotional overload, if you will. Their leader, their Lord, the love of their life has been laid in a tomb. And then days later, the body disappears. They think it's stolen. There's a resurrection. What is a resurrection? Then this presence comes back in this form that they've never encountered before, and has these meets with them and these interactions and says, I'm here, but I'm not. Don't touch me, but feel the holes. And this is the third time back. Talk about confused. I know when I get in places of high confusion, anxiety, there's a couple of natural responses for us. Bit of extreme. One, either you pack it away deep down inside and you just got to get back to some other normal activity until some level of your subconscious can process it out. You know what I'm talking about? Come on, you guys, you're not hanging with me today. I don't feel you. You know what I'm talking about? Early on when I started doing funerals at 24 years old on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, it was a really hard thing to handle, and I would have to go do something normal afterwards. After you've just processed and worked with all these people's grief and pain, and it wasn't a normal thing to have to handle of all these people's weight, and I'd have to go do something normal. That's how I got to know so many funeral directors, because they were in that same kind of place with you. David? We go to lunch afterwards. I go shopping. Not that I needed to shop, but I just needed, we do one of two things. We either sort of pack it away for a little bit until it can be processed in some portion, and we do something normal, or in time, then we have to have alone time in it so that we can think and reflect and process. I think the disciples were in this kind of place in the story because they're together, they're wandering around, they're trying to, this is the third time after, and they're in this place that Jesus has appeared, but they have to go back to some kind of life here. And so where did they come from and what were they before? Fishermen. And so what is it that Peter suggests that they do now? Go fishing. Doesn't it make sense? And the others are like, that's a great idea. Let's go. And they get in the boat out into the Sea of Galilee, which is just a giant lake. And they head out onto the water. I think looking for some normalcy, some way to process all that they've been through and figure out what they do next. They don't have a successful night. They head back towards shore. Now, this next encounter sort of ensues with Jesus. He's always a step ahead of them. He's already got the fish. He has a few miracles happen. The 153 fish in the net that doesn't break, and that there were no fish. And then on this side of the boat, there's 153 fish. They caught on pretty quick, right? Time number 3, and they get to shore, and Jesus already has fish. So why did they need 153 more fish? He had the fire with the fish and the bread waiting, and this symbolic expression of the breaking of the bread and the juice, the bread and the fish. And the encounter sets in, and it goes just from that feeding into that exchange of, okay, do you all really love me? These parting words, do you love me? Do you love me, followers? Do you? Do you love Jesus? So do this. Feed my sheep. Shepherd my sheep. Tend to my sheep. Feed my sheep. This is a mandate for them. In their responsive confusion, having spent their time out on the sea, looking back for their normalcy, recentering themselves, coming back, another encounter with Jesus, trying to figure out, what do we do now? You pick up your purpose, you dust yourself off, and you get back to work. Just what the disciples did. If you need some downtime, you recenter yourself with Jesus and hear these words. If you love me, then do this. Tend to my people. This is how you reconnect and recenter. This is how you re-strengthen yourself. Spend time with me in quiet and recharge and redirect yourself when you're ready, and get back out there. Feed my sheep. Tend to my sheep. Get busy. Your time is not over. There is work for you to do. Feed my sheep. And with that, it is that Jesus closes in this Gospel of John his time with his followers as they regroup themselves and find, how do we get our center back? We spend our time with Jesus, resting, relaxing, nourishing ourselves, and then recentering ourselves and our purpose and our ministry, and going out and getting busy. If you've been through trauma, spend your time with Jesus again and hear the message and the command and the directive, and get your butt back out there and get to work. Amen.